In trivia that will impress no one except the most ardent of our listeners, Clay, we have to note that today we are recording this on Friday, 9/8/2023, which is the 57th anniversary of TOS airing on television. So happy Star Trek Day.
This important day, given to us by a failed novelist. I might be conflating him with L. Ron Hubbard.
They're very similar. I think they were both in the military.
They were buddies, I think, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. They were friendly. Roddenberry was jealous of L. Ron's grift.
It is a beautiful day, which should be observed by all.
Yes, it's 57 years. I don't know. The numbers always seem weird. Like, we just went through our 9th anniversary, right? But doesn't 9 years of the podcast seem much too large for 57 years of Star Trek time? If that makes sense to you? Like, that feels...
You're really breaking this 9 years down into like how it exists on the cosmic calendar in ways disturbing to you.
The podcast has been around for 1/6 of Star Trek.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Even more if you get really technical about it.
How so?
No, I guess that's about right. Yeah, 1/6.
Don't get overcomplicated.
It's not 10 years, not quite 60 years. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's oh, sorry, I thought I clicked the wrong thing. But no, we're almost there. We're almost there to 60 years. In 3 more years when we're doing Voyager season 5, we'll be able to say such a thing. But we are instead in Voyager season 3. Oh, in other news, it's also my firstborn son's birthday today, so happy 7th to Alistair.
Oh, happy birthday, Alistair.
Before and after. He was born on Star Trek's 50th anniversary. This is before and after. It's the 21st episode of the 3rd season of Voyager.
When you have the cake for him, do you have to say, no, Alistair, this cake is for Gene?
That's right. Yeah. Your elder brother or your godfather, Gene. Came out on April 9th, 1997. Okay. Written by Kenneth Biller. Sorry, my brain fritzed out there. Written by Kenneth Biller. It's hot in this room. Directed by Alan Croker. In universe date, it's unknown, but it's 2373, 2369, 2370, 2371, 2374, 2378, and 2379. In before and after.
Nice.
Kes finds herself in temporal flux with her consciousness moving back in time through various episodes in her life up until her birth. Benjamin Button. Except I don't know if Benjamin Button had the memory. I've never seen the movie. I imagine he did not have amnesia going backwards in time. But
no. Yeah. He was just old when he was born.
Right. There's no memory shenanigans going on.
No memory shenanigans.
Yeah, that would have made... Who wrote Benjamin Button? Isn't that a famous sci-fi author?
Benjamin Button was written by... I have no idea.
It's not a Stephen King one? I can look it up. Well, you're telling me what you thought about before and after.
Well, I thought it was, we were going to have a bit of a crossover with Rotten Horror Picture Show because watching Kes give birth apparently out of her back was one of the more disturbing things I've seen on Star Trek in a while.
Or the vagina just goes way up there. Up there. It's F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote Benjamin Button.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So not a sci-fi writer, but famous.
Famous for
Great Gatsby.
Having one letter for the first name.
Yeah, and Zelda.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
His wife was Zelda, and they named the video game after her.
Is that true?
I think so, yeah.
Oh. Man, she must have seemed like she must have been down to party.
Yes.
That's naming that video
She seems like a real fun lady. Yeah.
Yeah. Always hide in the Triforce where you least expect it.
She's like Cass.
Yeah, I thought it was good. It was good in the way that Voyager episodes seem to be good, in that the whole time I'm watching it, all I could think about was The Next Generation. And
about a better time.
Yeah, like it's kind of like a Voyager riff on All Good Things, which is going to, if you're going to do that, all I'm going to do is think about All Good Things, because as everybody knows, that's my favorite single episode of the entire series.
Okay. I do you think it's close to All Good Things? I
kept thinking of it because it has the same sort of going back through time, learning information to be used the next time she time jumps, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And having to explain to people every time she time jumps that it had kind of the same. I mean, she goes back to the beginning of her own life where she's nothing more than a couple cells, which is kind of what they do in.
Right. Q says that primordial ooze or whatever you're
right.
about to crawl out of.
Yeah. That doesn't have any bearing on anything really in the story. So I thought it was good, but I also felt that it was kind of in line with Voyager, where at the end I thought it wrapped up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And ultimately was, I don't know, it was fine. But I would say this is definitely one of the better ones we've seen in a while.
Yep.
Yeah, I got to think on it a bit more before I can rate this one, I think.
I thought that the time travel construction was pretty unique for Star Trek. I don't think
it was.
That's why I guess I brought up, like, I don't think it's that similar to All Good Things. I understand what you mean, but it felt that the mechanism of time travel was pretty unique in this one. And
yeah.
I went through kind of an interesting thing with it, which was that when it started, like the first jump or 2 or 3, I was starting to get extremely annoyed by the mechanics of it because I was like, because she doesn't know anything at the very end and she keeps jumping back, and each time jump backwards, she gains information that she did not know. So she starts off not knowing anyone at all. She doesn't know the names of the people. And for whatever reason, I found that infuriating for the first couple jumps. And it was just like, it was such because it felt so, it felt so hard to be a viewer of the show and to know what's going on, and you're wondering when she's going to start putting it together. Eventually, they get to a point where I guess I would compare it to something like cause and effect, which is that after a while, the jumps to restart the cycle don't need to show you everything. So you can kind of build on things more effectively and get a little bit of momentum going. But I thought the mechanics were kind of neat. I thought it was a good use of Kes and her, like, what her origin is supposed to be. Like, it's the only episode that's actually dealt with her lifespan problem and, like, even addressed it, I think, in any kind of way that makes sense. That brings up a whole lot of weird questions about what goes on in the lifetime of Ocampa. But I think that the biggest reason that I wasn't crazy about this one is that, in contrast with some of the better, like, TNG or DS9 time travel episodes, I don't feel like I really learned much about anyone in this.
Yeah. Yes.
It feels very much of the Voyager special of the sci-fi idea is the focus of it, and everything else is kind of tangential to that.
Yeah, I actually thought it was at the end of it, my only takeaway from it really was that it was sort of just laying track for stuff that was going to come further down the road, specifically the stuff with Tom and B'Elanna. And I actually, honestly, at the end, I didn't even know if she was in the right era. I thought for a second that they had taken the opportunity to use this to jump them forward like 6 months or something.
Oh, I see.
Because
right.
I was so distracted by her hair. Because now she's just got long hair.
As was my wife, Amy. And this goes to show the difference between us. I didn't notice that at all, but it's all Amy was talking about at the end of the episode, going like, "Why is her hair different?"
Yeah, they use it as her hairstyle is such a marker of the different time periods.
Yeah, I was fascinated with the EMH's hair. Really was the thing that was grabbing me this entire episode.
I do like that they did not address that whatsoever. It's just like, when they start him back up, he's got hair now.
He's got hair.
But they used the hair on Kes as such a clear marker of like what time period she's in.
Yeah.
That ending her with the long hair made me feel like they had the point that we were going forward from now was like 6 months to a year in the future, which honestly,
it's a good way to cut some
not
time
the worst
off.
idea.
Yeah.
But it was just a kind of, I found that distracting. And like because of the whole Ocampa thing, I found myself doing like weird math in my head the whole time, being okay, so her daughter is half human. So what's her lifespan like? How long did Harry wait before he married Tom Paris'
His daughter? Yeah.
And now they have a son who
is
the
a quarter
doctor
Ocampan,
says is
right?
like, the doctor said he's like 6 months old or something.
Yeah, because he's not born in the first jump, right? Or maybe the second jump he's not born. Yeah, it's very soon.
The doctor makes some. He says. He makes reference to when they met Kess initially, and he says like we met. It's hard to believe we met you before you were even a year old. Not much older than your grandson is right now. So
sure.
I was like, okay, so does his grandson is like 6 months old or something? I don't know.
Yep.
So I start doing all this weird like hybrid Ocampan human.
Yeah. Algebra.
Algebra in my head about like, okay, if she's a half here and he's affected, that means he's a quarter. So how does that affect? So that was a little bit distracting.
Yeah. I was mostly distracted by Harry not seeming to wait more than 6 months to have a relationship with the child of Tom Paris. Struck me as
apparently
very weird.
Not.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, interesting episode in there with Tom Paris being kind of weirded out that his best friend wants to bang his daughter, who's like 18 months old,
who basically just appeared. Yeah, like he's an infant in normal stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other, the other Ocampan thing is that it's weird to see. It's like I understand. Kess is like saying she's only going to live for like 7, 8, or 9 years, right? Works in the context of the show itself expecting to run that long, I think. What's weird about it is that when you see the jumps and they mention like 6 months in a year or 2 years, and you realize that to this point in the show, we've lived through a significant amount of Kess's life. You know, like it's kind of... It's kind of disturbing, but the time jumping and the demarcation of them saying like this is 6 months, this is a year, and you're going to be dead in a year, so you sort of work backwards in your head. It just makes it seem like her life is incredibly insignificant in a lot of ways. Well, it's so short. Yeah,
we kind of talked about that in one of the previous episodes. I don't know if it was. I think it was the one where she breaks up with Neelix and threatens to and wants to leave the show. Those are two separate episodes, I think. But they've touched on it a bit where she breaks up with Neelix and she's like, I want to do other stuff. And then that one where she wants to stay with the other guy off the ship and live her new life or whatever.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, you live for 9 years. You've been on this ship for 3 of those 9 years.
Yeah.
Your life is very boring.
Yeah, that I think that's what I'm getting at. It's like she's not living the life that she should live or that she seems to want to live, which is when it highlights it this way, it just seems kind of sad. But I guess she, the point of this episode is saying that outside of these events, she is actually living a full life on the ship. It's just that this is the only episode that's shown any of that stuff to be happening. So. And then you're left wondering if any of it is going to happen at the end, because as they make it clear to say, this is only one possible timeline that they're following along.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I also, this is a stupid side thing, but it was a little strange when the first time she jumps back from the first time that you see Tom Paris and you see other people on the crew.
Yep.
They is like 9 years or 6 years into the future, and they have done no. I guess they're in a weird spot because it's like, is 6 years enough to do any aging to somebody?
Oh, right, yeah.
So like, should Chakotay have more gray in his hair?
Yes.
Or should Tom be balding more? Or something?
Fatter.
You know what I mean?
Something like that. They do it with the doctor through his hair changes, but he's the only one.
I guess that's the best one that they can do.
Yeah.
But I found myself thinking about that. It's weird because I just think it's an interesting idea. I think they do it pretty well for the most part. Like you said, the mechanic is interesting, but so much of these peripheral stuff I found distracting. And also, again, as these Voyager episodes tend to do, it's going along, and then it ends with the doctor going, and fixed it.
And you're fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Everything's fine now.
Yeah.
Just had to flip this button and we're good to go.
I actually couldn't really explain to you what they do to fix anything. And I know that's maybe not unusual for Voyager, but I don't really understand the mechanics of how they brought her back. I don't know if it's worth discussing. Did you have any sense of it? It's like, it just seems like, she went all the way back and then he did something with that little biochamber thing and that fixed her, I guess.
Well, the strange thing about it, I mean, you get into, this is where you decide how hard you want to get into time travel theory, I guess, but
Yeah.
it's like, can she really theoretically go back past the point that she was infected with the radiation from that bomb? Apparently, I guess she can.
Apparently she can. Yes, they do mention that in the episode, saying,
Oh, they do?
Yeah, saying that the chromaton bomb or whatever, like, is it possible to go back? And then they also say, is it possible to go back before you even exist? Which she doesn't, I guess, because that's her point of rebounding back into reality.
But does she rebound because that's as far as you can go, or does she rebound because that's when the doctor just grabbed her?
I think the doctor did something. When I was watching it, I thought, oh, they're just going to have her bounce back because it's like a ping pong hitting the wall or something. Like she just has to come back. But the implication, I guess, at the end is that the doctor did something. I don't think it's really important what the doctor did because it's all just mumbo jumbo in the first place.
In my head, I was envisioning him playing. You ever played the Arkham City games?
Yeah, the Batman games.
You know when you have to do that thing where like Batman has to use like an echolocation thing to like break into a door, and you got to line up the signals so they're the same wavelength. That's all I imagined he was doing. He's like, oh yeah, now she's on the same chrono path as everybody else. She's good to go.
Yeah. It's so it ultimately, like, the fixing of her is not particularly anything at all. Did you?
Yeah.
I mean, did you find it to be an effective Kess episode? I thought it was fine just in showing what she is, but I didn't know. And it's funny because they go through quite a bit. Like, they go through a lot of potential ideas that she could exist and she could have experienced. But because I think of like how rapid it goes through things, it doesn't give me the Inner Light TNG journey of like you grow old with Picard and you sort of feel, even in the context of a 45-minute episode, you feel like you've lived another lifetime with him. So it's sad when he comes back at the very end. Yeah. I thought this felt a little bit too quick.
Yeah, I found myself coming away thinking, this is an interesting idea. I think the sci-fi aspect of it was executed fairly well for the show. But I think it runs into the problem that a lot of these episodes do, which is I don't know why Kess needed to go on this journey. I don't know what, and so I could be misremembering. I might be giving TNG more credit.
Yep.
But like all good things, I feel like Picard is on a journey for a certain reason and learns something at the end of it. Right? That's, as we've talked a million times before, the reason you do time travel stories is so the person traveling through time can learn something about the time they currently live in through the actions that they take in whatever time they go to.
Yeah, I mean, because that one's kind of a summation of the series, which is going like seeing how things have changed from the very beginning, the first episode, all the way to now.
It's less so with cause and effect, because cause and effect is more of like a mystery that you have to kind of solve a puzzle. But like yesterday's Enterprise, you learn a lot about Picard through yesterday's Enterprise that you wouldn't normally learn through a normal episode. And you don't learn so much about...
And there's the sacrifice aspect.
Yes. You don't learn so much about Guinan, who's the one who's caught between worlds. But like you learn a lot about Tasha.
Yeah.
You know, you're seeing how this time travel is affecting these characters in a major way. This, I don't... Like, by the time that they get to the end of it, I don't feel like Kess has really learned anything from the journey, or I don't feel like enough attention has been given to her shortened lifespan, right, for me to feel like at the end of this she has a new outlook on anything, you know, except for like, well, I guess I need to go do my work now because there's no time like the present. Yeah, sure, okay, but that's just like a fun line to end the episode on. But like, what is Kess taking away from this experience that has enlightened her anymore to her own situation,
to herself? Yeah.
She learns. I don't think there is
exterior details. She learns about possible things that might happen to the ship, but nothing about herself.
Right, and I think that's the biggest missed opportunity for the episode.
Yeah, because I think that I think it suffers from that because of the way Voyager does stuff, which is to say, like, in the Inner Light, right? Like Picard, in the Inner Light, Picard has a scene or two where he like establishes where he is and what, like, how he can't get out of this, right? And then it starts aging him. And it's the later scenes of it are more about showing how he's settled into this new life, right? As he's like, he has a family, and he's growing old, and his wife dies, and his family, and then the whole planet dies. The problem is that Voyager is copying the cause and effects mystery story. So what Kes has to do, and all she has time to do in each jump, is to go, this is what's happening, Doctor. You told me last time that this is the thing that's going to be happening now. My body temperature is dropping. And it's this like, she doesn't really have time to explore what's happening to her because she has to constantly relay to the other characters what's going on with her.
Right, yeah.
And it just becomes more of like the sci-fi component than it is about her learning anything through this journey of going back through time, which is probably a very difficult thing to kind of construct as like a story that makes sense. But I just found that she was... There's a lot of scenes of technobabble in this where they're like talking about the biochamber, they're talking about this thing, they're talking about that thing, and it doesn't really give Kes enough time to establish the fact that she has a family, that she's doing all these other things, that there are these potential things that might happen to Voyager, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I think it wouldn't take much, honestly, because especially all I think it really takes is when she's at her oldest point. So it's another one. I've said this a few times. I hate saying this, but I feel like this would be better served as like a B'Elanna episode, even though it's not a 1-to-1, obviously, because it's very specifically dealing with her Ocampan physiology. But the reason I say that is because I feel like what's missing is Kes never changes the way she approaches anything.
Right.
She's the same, at the same level always. I don't even know if we've ever seen her like yell at anybody, except for that one time where she was acting like a crime boss.
Oh yeah, when she got possessed. Yeah.
But like, so what I think is missing is older Kes having some sort of freak out or outburst about how her life is so short and that she's at the end of her life being presented with all these things that she never chose to do, like some sort of inner turmoil that is a result of her having 9 years to live, even if that's not specifically what the story is about.
Yeah.
Inner turmoil about having 9 years to live and having gotten to the end of that and looking back at this moment, having no idea how she got there. So like you can use that as a jumping off point. So, which will lead you into, you could do a similar scene with her, with Tom, when Tom is telling her about their kids. And then, she says something like, I've been on this ship my entire life and everything just has gone. It's just, I don't remember anything. It's like a blur. So this get into what this problem means for her instead of just, how do we stop the ship from blowing up and the people die, which is fine. I mean, that's obviously going to be part of it, but I think there is another draft of this story that is an A+ 5-star episode. Yeah. But they didn't get there.
I would agree. I think that like philosophically, the point to me almost kind of seems to be like you're always, everyone is kind of unaware or doesn't really pay attention to the fact that they could be at their end of their life, right? Like so you could get hit by a car tomorrow, and you wouldn't recognize that today is
killed walking your doggy.
Pull up Brent Spiner in Picard season 2 and get you. You don't know when the end is going to come. So I feel like if you open this with something about Kes feeling frustrated about her life or something, and then you do this backwards thing, Kes has this unique opportunity to kind of like know exactly how finite her life is in a very understandable way. Yeah. And you can go back and you can sort of see that like even all these bad things that are happening, she can get to the end of it and have sort of like this like, come to Jesus moment where she's like, all of this is going to build what I am. Like even if it doesn't work out the way that I experienced, I have to appreciate the moments because it's going to shape how I was at the beginning of this episode, which is when I'm an old person. But she doesn't even comment on that towards the end. They're more interested in the timeline that they're potentially in. They're interested in the Voyager aspect of like, whoa, holy shit. Like, I wonder if any of that stuff is going to actually come to pass. Like, do you want to tell us about any of the stuff? And she's like, no, it's better you don't know. But I feel that she needs to have a conversation about like, if she doesn't want to tell them about how she saw the future happen, she has to at least have a little monologue where she explains like but she came to appreciate the journey all the more, and that everyone else should too. So I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is all hindsight, obviously, and I don't know what sort of plans were in place for Kes to leave the show, which I believe, does that happen at the end of the season, or does it start like the beginning of
season 4?
Okay, either way. I think in retrospect, if they knew that they were going to write her off the show, there's so many episodes that we've covered that just feel like great opportunities to dig into what her status quo is and what her feeling is about being on the ship and about how much time she has, and which would be a great lead up to Kes eventually leaving the show. I don't know how she leaves the show. I don't know if she gets blown up or if she just decides not to go with them or what. I don't know.
Yeah.
But assuming she doesn't get killed by a muck monster.
Yes. That's a safe assumption.
Yeah. I think they could have spent a lot of this season looking at her character and telling stories about her journey and why she ultimately chooses to leave, if that's in fact what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's so unfortunate because I feel like so many of these sci-fi episodes that actually have pretty good concepts end up just not being much more than the concept.
Yeah, I think,
and they do the concept pretty well, but at the end, it's just like, oh, fine.
Yes, I would agree. That's basically how I feel about this one. But it's a real Voyager trait. I think they definitely pulled a lot of the sci-fi angle writers like Minosky and Braga over. Like those are writers who tend to really default to the sci-fi concept is like the strong point, and you just kind of go from there.
Right.
And it doesn't, there's a time and a place for it. Sometimes it works for Braga, like it works in cause and effect to great effect. But for here, I think it's coming down to the fact that you just don't know the Voyager characters well enough for this to mean anything. And it's the same with like, Janeway's dead for most of the episode, and it didn't land.
Thank you in the way that Michael. I needed the week off. I appreciate it.
She was doing her casting call.
Is Pillar running the show at this point?
No, he's gone. He's gone at this point. This is a Jerry Taylor run show this season.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. They can.
You're my favorite Jerry moving forward. Once the other one shows up, I can tell you that much.
We haven't really talked about that. A female showrunner, I would have expected Janeway to really come into fruition in her season, but
is she? It's a female Jerry?
Yeah, it's a female Jerry. Yeah, okay. Jeri. Yeah. But I guess we'll wait for a Janeway episode to talk about that, maybe. So now we're at a point where I've read some of the patron comments, and I was not sure how to handle this with you. But the patrons
too many N-words.
the patrons talk about this, so I think that I have to. What did you think of the Year of Hell plotline in this?
Fascinating thing to drop if they are just going to avoid it now. Like this, I feel like the Year of Hell thing would have potential to be. So when I talked before about this feeling more like them just laying track for stuff to come in the future, that feels like something that they could be laying track for that they just cannot deal with in a more efficient way.
Yeah.
But you now know that there is this other alien race out there who's really going to fuck them up.
Yeah.
And they're kind of on a path towards meeting it. Do you know? Do they actually run into these guys?
So this was extremely distracting to me because I know about it. The Year of Hell basically plays out like what they say in this episode does, and it's an upcoming storyline in Voyager.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna assume not exactly the way.
Not exactly. There are going to be some changes, but the general idea down to the name of the aliens is the same, and it stays the same. So I found that incredibly distracting because it was. And I guess originally, production-wise, Year of Hell was supposed to be the ending and start of this season into the next. It was going to be like the cliffhanger episodes.
Sure.
But they don't do that. They'll do Scorpion instead, and Year of Hell comes later. but I was a little bit distracted by it, and I was wondering how you interpreted it, not knowing that it was going to be something that was going to happen, whether or not it was like like how you thought of it in terms of the storyline, whether or not it was something that was like important enough or like effective enough to include, if you thought it was not actually going to happen. Because I was distracted by it, going like, I'm shocked that frankly, I didn't think that Voyager was capable of planning this far ahead in some ways, you know? So that's what really caught me off guard by it.
Yeah. You know, it's one of those things where I if they had ended the episode on more of a, I don't know if bittersweet, or let's say like slightly foreboding note, that implied that what you saw in this episode was previews of things to come. These guys are coming and they're going to fuck us up. Like that would be really interesting. In a way similar to the way they introduced the Borg in TNG.
Yeah.
But the way that they end this, I don't expect these guys ever to show up or be talked about ever again.
Right, yeah. Well, that would be, and if you've been watching the show to this point, you'd be like, this is never going to be mentioned again. Yeah.
Yeah, I assume they probably have a civil war going on or something. And
well, they also undermine it with the ending scene of like, who knows if any of this is going to happen. That, to me, that's a hand-wavy thing, right? They're just saying that none of this is actually canon, is what I take that to mean.
Yeah, like I feel like what they need is you have Kes have that sort of up attitude about it. And when she's like, yeah, you know, I should probably go check this stuff out. And they're like, well, why don't you stay here? And she's like, you know what? I learned there's no better time than the present. Boop, 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 boop. And then she leaves, and she's got like another scene with the doctor where she's like, I've seen what's coming.
Right.
We need to prepare for this. It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
You know, like that kind of thing, where it's like, oh, the stuff she saw is real. It is going to happen. The fact that they're leaving her, I'm assuming, with long hair should be like your first inkling that that's the direction they're going. And so I feel like if they had given a bit of a tag at the end where it ends on a bit of a down kind of foreboding note, I think at the very least I think that bumps the episode up even by itself. Yeah. Because now you're coming away and you're thinking, oh, well, okay, now Kes has actually learned something. Wasn't just about her. This was about the what's upcoming and the possible fate that is awaiting the ship in a way that the episode as it stands now doesn't really seem concerned with.
See, and knowing about it.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because like the way that they bring it up, she's like, Janeway, by the way, just because it's on my mind, if you happen to run into this space, there's these guys called the whatever they're called.
Well, that's the thing.
Try to avoid those guys. She's like, okay, sure.
Well, that's the thing. When I see knowing about this, when she told Janeway about the Kremen, it's not in the ending timeline. So telling that Janeway is not helpful to this Kes, because Kes ends up with a different Janeway, right?
What?
Kes time jumps again after that.
Doesn't she? I thought she told her about the Kremen in like the final scene.
Oh, I don't think
when she's.
Oh, did she?
When she's back, I honestly don't remember.
Oh, she definitely tells Janeway in a prior timeline and then jumps again. And I was like, don't tell that Janeway, because that Janeway isn't going to be with us in the next thing.
If that is true, which I can't remember if that's true or not. If that is true, then yes, that's not the way to do it.
Yeah, and maybe I'm. Hold on, let me look at the memory out for the last thing. Senior staff pushes Kes to tell them about the future, but Tuvok points out that Kes' experience was only one possible interaction at that point likely affects the future. Kes does promise to write a report to Janeway with all the information. Oh, but decides to keep the rest to herself. She does tell her about the Kremen at the end. Okay, so I missed that at all. But she...
But even still,
did she mention it to Janeway? That's such a terrible way to do that, to say I'll write a report to Janeway about it and not have her talk to Janeway about it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like it needs. Excuse me. They toss that stuff off so cavalierly that it never feels like it's going to matter or come up again. Where if they had just been joking around about whatever, and then she's like, "Captain, can I talk to you for a quick second?"
Right,
and then it's like, "Captain, we're going to go into a certain sector of space that is going to have these guys that are really bad news.
Yep.
We need to prepare."
I saw your death. Yeah.
Yeah. And even Janeway could either, either go with it and be like, okay, thank you, or maybe even Janeway brushes it off a little bit, which leaves Kes a little disturbed about things.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's what this needs to really kind of get us into. She needs to have the letter that she writes to Doc about the fact he's going to get shot by the Libyans.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Such a weird part of that movie, isn't it?
Were they Libyans? I guess they were Libyans. Yeah.
Libyan terrorists come to shoot Doc Brown because he didn't build them a bomb and he stole their plutonium.
Time and a place. Thanks everybody.
I will say, sorry, I was just going to say, I will say when I was a kid, anytime my family and I were on a road trip, anytime we saw one of those VW buses,
Yep.
My parents would always point and go, look, the Libyans.
They're there.
Because that's what they drive in the movie.
Yep. I don't think I wouldn't have been able to find Libya on the map. Maybe I still can't. Thanks everybody.
It's somewhere in the middle.
Thanks everybody for listening to the podcast today, as we talked about before and after. If you want to leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes and you want to support the show, you go to patreon.com/thepensky file. You leave your thoughts there and we read them on the podcast. You also get extra content, extra podcasts and all that stuff. It's much appreciated. Patreon.com/thepensky file. So Clay, I'll read a lot of these to get through them, but I'll send you this one first so I can do this myself. So this is Kyle Barrett with Before and After.
Before and After. With Neelix as security officer, no wonder Captain Janeway's dead. This episode highlights to me the missed potential of having a character who ages like Kes on the show. How cool would it be if she was born in the pilot and died from old age in the series finale? The show charting her lifetime with perhaps a different actress playing her each season. That'd be kind of fun. Instead of focusing on her character, this episode is more interested in the sci-fi conceit and plotting, with Kes not really learning or developing. Harry hanging around until her infant daughter becomes fuckable is just uncomfortable. And why would an alien on a starship in the future call their son something boring like Andrew? It should be Zenith or Quasar or something cool like that. 3 Ocampan gilfs out of 5.
I know it was probably intentional. It took me a very long time to understand who was related to who in the beginning of this, as they were jumping back in time. It's like, wait a minute, what is Harry doing in this? Like, I understand Tom seems to be the husband, but who's the daughter? It was confusing.
Right. Yeah. How old is her daughter?
One Ocampan year, which is the age that Neelix was hooking up with Kes, I guess.
Well, technically she could be older than that though, because she's half human. I don't know how that's
right.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
That's when I started doing this math in my head.
Right. Yeah. She is just 12 human years old. Norman Buckwald says, Before and After, an interesting time concept that works well. Clearly, Trek has not exhausted what they can do with time as of yet. Doing it with the short-lived Ocampan Kes works perfectly and actually creates perhaps the most compelling episode of Kes as the Kes we know and love. Given that, the sequences of the oh no, if she is doomed was a bit much, but otherwise great and compelling what if story. 4.5, 1.47 microseconds temporal missile readings out of 5. So I think that's a 4 out of 5 from Norman. Point next to G says, Before and After, it's nice to see a different spin on a time travel episode. Using Kes's entire life as a framing device is a great use of the character, and it's always fun to see potential what-ifs of the series' future. Jennifer Lien does a very good job, especially as the older Kes. Woodrow says, Before and After, befitting Kes's humble lifespan, instead of fumbling around shouting, Q, why am I her? Q, why am I her? Kes immediately begins solving the crisis, preventing her daughter from getting groomed by Tom's holosuite wingman and successfully restoring Harry's virginity, all while having an epic death. 4 out of 5.
No preventing that.
No.
I did find myself thinking like the day that Paris's daughter was born, do you think he and Harry were like having a drink and he's like, Tom, you got a really beautiful daughter there.
Growing up right before our eyes.
How long before it's cool? If you know what I mean.
That's that we were talking about that recently, right? There should be sexual frustration on Voyager. They're like, it kind of makes sense with, whatever. They never want to go on the holodeck for this kind of stuff, but you could work it into the story. Harry would have brought it up awkwardly early, I think, although Tom would have been cool with it.
It would have been great if in that part of the timeline, like the underlying thing was that Tom was not cool with this. He's like, well, she's my daughter. She can make her own decisions, but I don't know. She's like 10.
Every time.
Well, I guess no, she must be tops. She's like 3.
The
2,
yeah,
maybe?
the daughter. Yeah. 2.
Yeah, 2.
Every time she jumps back, Tom should just be yelling, "Don't let Harry touch her!" This is Royo with Before and After.
Before and After, a fresh time travel episode that appears to have inspired other shows after it. An episode so memorable, I can still remember the details of the day I first watched this episode when it was broadcast. An awfully ambitious episode that genuinely had me at the edge of my seat, wondering how Kes was going to get herself out of this one, especially when she regressed to the point of being a zygote. Although, to be fair, I was far younger back then.
We were all. Look at this picture of me when I was younger.
Far younger than the zygote? Especially neat is that this episode uses its time travel premise to provide us a preview of the famous upcoming Year of Hell in Season 4, a concept that doesn't get used enough, in my opinion. There's also, that should be the name of the show. There's also a bittersweet element to this episode to see this rich tapestry of life ahead of Kes that will be all lost when 7 of 9 replaces her. A classic Star Trek episode, 5 out of 5. At this rate, we'll keep getting younger until we suffer a fate worse than death. Pre-life, then death. There's a quote from Professor Hubert Farnsworth.
Benjamin Espinosa says, "Before and After, this one started out with a big eye roll. However, by the second act, I was hooked. The mention of the Krenin and the Year of Hell, and I knew this was a prequel episode of sorts. This episode foreshadows terrible events to come, while at the same time offering us some cool what-if scenarios. Tom and Kes, Harry and Lennis. Is it Lennis? I can't remember. Janeway and B'Elanna's death, etc. Even the Doctor with hair. I loved the cinematography elements with Kes going back in time until before her very birth. Very cool ideas and a great use of time travel. Best episode of the season so far, 5 out of 5.
I do like that after the Doctor gets shut down for like a year or whatever it is.
Yeah.
When he comes back on, he's just like, he basically has like a midlife crisis and he gets hair plugs and finally chooses a name and
reinvents
Dr. Van Gogh.
Reinvents himself. Yeah.
Also, we haven't even mentioned, I think, is this the first actual on-screen documented use of a camera?
Who takes a picture?
They take the picture of Kes holding
the baby.
Her granddaughter.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's like a tricorder that works like a Polaroid camera.
It's true. We might have answered a question there. It might actually be the very first use of a camera. It comes out like Polaroid, right? Just prints out the picture.
Yeah, I can't remember if it prints it out or if it's like an iPhone where they just turn
they
it
look
around
at it.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Gotcha. Jonas says, "Before and After, the sci-fi element of the plot requires at least 2 episodes. So Kes is shot with a time gun, causing her to relive short periods of time in reverse order, starting with old age. Eventually, she gets back to the point at which she was shot, figures out the phase shift, whatever that is, caused by the time gun, and tells the Doctor about it, who brings her back to the present before she can regress all the way to non-existence. Well, okay, I guess. We know that Kes saw only one of an infinite number of possible futures. Why then does everyone treat what she saw as the future? A high 3 out of 5.
Because that's what you do in these stories.
Yeah.
Because if you tell them what's going to happen, then it's going to change. It's going to be weird.
Yep.
It's going to tear a hole in the space-time continuum.
Grappler John Zorn says, "Before and After, it's like that one when Worf was jumping around in alternate realities, except it's Kes. Honestly, I don't even know if this is a good episode or not. If I cared about Kes, I think it might be. Have I been rooting for Kes and the rest of the characters to actually turn into characters? Sure, but after a certain number of mind-numbingly mediocre hours wasted waiting for it to happen, I find myself just watching and waiting for the episode to be magically over, which is exactly what happens. At least it's implied that Harry got to wet his wick off screen this time. 2 holographic toupees out of 5. It's true. Harry planted blue balls. It might be responsible for this episode that Harry found himself in.
I was thinking, do you think it's important to the story that Kes has no memories?
Sorry, at the very start, do you mean?
Through the whole thing, how she has no memories of her past. Because she wakes up, because she has 0 memories. Like it's not like she just has alternate timeline memories.
Yes.
She has no memories whatsoever.
Yeah, that's what I mentioned as I thought was frustrating. If she knows everything? I think it's just too obvious, right? It's entirely done because of the mystery aspect of it. Like if she knows what's going on. So for the construct of how they decided to do this, I think it's necessary. And I appreciated it by the time that it was getting going. I just found it annoying at the start of things.
Yeah. Does it But if she did remember her life,
Yep.
excuse me, does it not offer more opportunity to do the kind of thing where she's sitting there with Tom Paris
Thinking about
talking and he's telling her about their relationship and their daughter, and she's like, I never, she has memories up to a point, but then, I don't know.
I would have been fine with it just putting it at the end, really, because I feel like that can be your summary thing, but as you're saying, it doesn't.
I guess,
go towards it.
What the problem is, though, is that her chrono whatever happens at a point past where we
have seen her.
Seen her.
Yep.
And so if she has memories of the past, then she has memories of stuff that we haven't seen. Yeah, so it makes sense, I guess. I mean, I don't know if it makes sense, but it's I can see why they did it.
Yeah, it's an understandable decision. Matt Ross says, before and after, I like this one as it reminded me of the Star Child sequence in 2001. Interesting idea, and it revives storylines, and we see how adversity and circumstances changes the crew into their new roles, like Neelix in security and more children. Nice callbacks to earlier seasons and a setup for the Year of Hell. Nice little touches of the Doctor's arrogance and his own creativity, as well as adding hair, which is fun. 4 hair pieces out of 5. I do like the running joke of the Doctor in every timeline says that he came up with a brilliant thing to solve the problem.
Yeah, that was very funny.
Tactile Bear, before and after, what the hell is the blue cake made of? It looks like cheese wheel. Anyway, you can tell this is an alternate timeline because Harry Kim is confirmed to have gotten laid. That aside, an episode that is mainly interesting because it offers a glimpse into an alternate Voyager future, which is something I always like, even if it features yet more time travel of sorts. Bob J. Kester says, before and after, the puzzle is fascinating, the personal and sci-fi stakes are balanced, and as an old Adam Warlock fan, I love a flash forward that pays off later. But I find myself mostly moved when the mom said someday her daughter will see the sun. 4 belated birthday presents out of 5. Discussion topic. Would this make a better intro to Voyager than the pilot?
Ooh, interesting question. No. Because you need to know what Kess's deal is for this to work.
Yeah, and I think you need to know. I was confused with knowing the new people. Imagine not knowing anybody on the show. Yeah. I think
if you get to the end, the fact that Tom and B'Elanna are together means nothing to you if you don't know why that's weird.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Hat says, before and after, one interesting piece of continuity with the episode is when Voyager encounters the Krenin in season 4, 7 identifies the same frequency number, or whatever it's called, to defend against the Krenin's attacks. However, Janeway apparently forgets Kess's warning about the Krenin. I like this episode. Some will hate it. It felt fresh.
That makes me really mad.
That Janeway doesn't remember?
The fuck, man?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
What are you going to do this for if you don't...
She didn't read the report. There's probably a line of dialogue saying that she was too tired to read the report.
I just thought she was crazy.
Changeling says before and after, he's got another fucking song. I'm going to send this one to you to see if you can identify which one this is. There's got to be a before and after before the show is set right.
Oh, jeez.
What is this? What song is it?
I have no idea.
Soon we'll get to 7 and 9. We just have to get through this shite.
There's got to be a before and after before the show is set right. Soon we'll get to 7 of 9. We just have to get through this shite. I don't know.
Yep, we'll just keep reading. We're gonna need clues.
You know what? Just skip it. Skip it. Overall, this episode was pretty good, but 2 things irk me. 1, Harry marries someone when we had an episode of him engaged to Libby on Earth and was pained to leave her behind. I guess it is because he knows that the Ocampan will die before they get back. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. She's half human.
That's the best affair.
It is.
The best affair is someone who won't survive.
Plus, it is his best friend's daughter.
Yep.
2, it is a pet peeve of mine. I hate traveling backwards through time via jumps. Just once, I would want them to experience all the time in reverse, like they are in the Red Room from Twin Peaks. 3.5 Neelix is commenting on Kess's blowing ability right in front of her husband out of 5.
It was. She put out all the candles. Excuse me. Clear my throat here. A couple more. Dialing Up Star Trek says, before and after, wait, I'm confused. If Kess only lives 9 years and she has a child, then she would only live to see her child turn 8 years old.
Yeah, that's like 90% of their, well, it's literally, about 90% of their life, right? I don't know how numbers work. You know what I'm
Sorry,
talking
I'm
about.
confused. Wait, if Kess only lives 9 years and she has a child, Then she would only...
Assuming... I guess she couldn't have no, that wouldn't be right because she's 3 right now. And so she doesn't have the child till she's like 5 or 6 or 4 at least.
Yep.
And so she would only live to see the child be 5.
But okay, let me see if the rest of this fills me in. Her daughter is not Ocampa because the doctor says there are no other Ocampas on board. Wait, does Kess age like dogs do? 7 years equals 1 human year. How could she be alive and have a grown daughter? They're both aging quickly, right? Am I missing something that's going on here?
I don't think that... I don't know if that's a show something or maybe he misheard something, but I mean, it's clear that the daughter ages quickly.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I would have made all this a growing old end-of-life dream where Kess learns what matters most is the relationship she has on Voyager and what she wants to stay. Yes. I know that would make Clay so happy. Again, another reliable sort of 1 out of 5. Yes, please make Neelix chief of security for Voyager. So yes, they're all aging quickly. Mm-hmm. Atanga says, before and after...
For the record, I don't need this to be a dream. I just need it to be about something.
That would be a dream. Atanga says, before and after, with the glorious reveal of Kessa's back vagina, the Ocampa officially becomes Star Trek's dumbest alien species, beating out that that guy with the crap over his mouth that Quark serves soup to in Melora. Seriously, she has mustard hands when she's ovulating and now a back vagina. Do the Ocampa even have genitals down there, Tom? Meanwhile, Harry knocks up Tom's daughter just a few months after seeing her in diapers. Janeway dies off screen, and Chronoton technobabble is the key to it all. It's a fresh enough times travel story, and although a pretty fun outing for Voyager. 3 sweet Year of Hell references out of 5, plus 1 bonus open back sack. Artoria says...
actually, Janeway dies on camera. She gets blown up at the...
Oh, yeah, that's right. Desk. Yeah, she does, yeah. Artoria says, before and after, I wonder if when this was released, the directors were teasing the fans to see if they liked Tom ending up with Kess or B'Elanna better. This episode was surprisingly good. I have to admit I was concerned in the beginning, but this episode won me over. The concept of aging back in time and using the experience to inform your present is an interesting concept, although Kim marrying Paris's daughter put a lot of weight to the phrase robbing the cradle. Kim, you were born a virgin, you will die a virgin, and only your fleas will mourn you. 4 Chronoton torpedoes out of 5. Sorry, where am I? Last one. Jaron Hatch says, make sure this is right. Yes, Jaron Hatch says, before and after, I think this one benefits from a long string of mediocre to bad episodes preceding it because it feels like a breath of fresh air. On its own, it's an entertaining time travel episode, and in classic Voyager style, it never really rises above its superficial novelty. Still, this might be the best Kess episode out there, mostly due to the fact that there aren't really any good Kess episodes. 3.5 classically bad Star Trek hair pieces out of 5.
Is she going to keep the long hair?
I don't know. I think so.
She looks weird with I don't like the long hair. She looks very different.
Yeah, it's
I should say
looks a little dated.
I think she looks fine with it, but she looks different. Like I don't look at her and see Kess. I look at her and
she looks like a different person. Interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for listening. I agree with the but thanks everybody for leaving your thoughts on Patreon. Patreon.com/the Pensky File. Thanks for the support. Clay, what are we going to give it? I liked Jaron's comment here about this probably benefits from the mediocrity that we saw before the episode got here. I saw a bunch of 5s from the patrons, and I'm not gonna judge your taste, but I can't give this one a 5. But what are you going to give it?
No, I'm not going to give it a 5. I am going to give it a 4. I think.
Okay.
Because I do think this is probably the most inventive episode we've seen. Again, it doesn't quite get there. I think there's a lot of pieces that could get it there, but it's just not all there for me. So I'd say it's better than average, but it's not great. Yeah,
I'm just gonna say it's a high 3 for me. I don't think I wouldn't recommend this one to anyone. I don't think it's good for the season, but it's not something that like. I thought it was just good. I thought it was competently good, really, and it didn't bore me to tears or anything like that. But a high 3, definitely one of the stronger episodes we've seen in a while.
Yeah, I don't know if I would recommend this one. I probably would. I don't know if it's tough because at this point, are there 10 that I would recommend like above any other ones?
No, I mean, for
Yeah.
me, certainly not. Like, I would recommend like Tuvik's Eye of the Needle, I think, are the two that pop out to my mind. There's probably a couple others. There's that one in the first season that I really liked. But no, there's probably not 5 Voyager episodes that I would say, yeah, you should watch this one.
Yeah.
So, strong 3. It's a 4 for Clay. Thanks, everybody. Patreon.com/The Pensky Files. Support us there if you want to. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
Check out Rotten Horror Picture Show and Badass Beyond. Batman. What's this called? The Badass Podcast. And we've got a comic book on the stands right now. We've got Batman White Knight Presents Generation Joker. Number 5 is coming out soon. Number 6, the last issue, comes out in October. So check that out.
Thanks very much, everybody. We'll be back next week with Real Life, which is a doctor episode, I think. Hopefully he still has his hair. And other than that, thanks for listening. Join the Discord. Leave your comments. Let us know what you thought about before and after and why we're wrong and why it's the greatest Voyager episode of all time. Thanks very much for listening. We will see you next time.